Okay, so I know that some of you were expecting this to be a screencast about serializers, but I realize we've been doing Ember Data for 2 straight months now, and there's at least another month's worth just in serializers. So we're going to take a quick break and talk about some other more general Ember stuff. This week we're going to be talking about ES2015 destructuring. It's a really cool concept that you might already be using, but you just don't know what it's called and all the cool advanced stuff you can do with it. So here's one of the more basic examples. So we have our hash that has x, y, and z values, and then we let this hash be x and y. And so what that does is now x here, this variable, is 5, and this variable y is 4. So when we console log, it'll be 4. Here's what it does when it's transformed into ES5. So it has a private variable, xyz, and then it just calls x on it, assigns that to variable x, and then calls y on that and assigns that to variable y. So this is just a really great shortcut for these 3 lines. Now, in this case, we're assigning directly from the hash when it's declared, but you could call something a hash and put in a variable and then destructure it. So you can carry this hash in another variable and destructure it later. You can see a version of this in the imports and exports. You may remember this from video 62, where we're exporting various types of salsa, and we're exporting named variables and then a default. And then here, these two are basically destructuring from where it got stored in the file system, in the resolver. So that's a more advanced version of this. I say more advanced, it's really the same thing, but with knowledge of how the imports and exports of Ember work. So this is the basic level of destructuring. You can also go further. Here we have this. Now we're destructuring, and z is an entire object, but we can also destructure things further. For example, we could, let's go ahead and name this something besides x. So we can take z and we can let a from z, so we've destructured that further, but we can do this all in the same let statement. So we're destructuring this completely here. So we're grabbing a. And z, of course, is, well, you can't actually get both z and something within z, right? Because it says z is not defined, so we can't even have it as an undefined logging. So if we wanted to do this, then we would need to, once again, do the slow version of destructuring. One other cool feature of destructuring is that you aren't necessarily stuck with this variable. So it's a here, but it doesn't have to be called a. You could call it h. And then it's working just fine. So you can change the name of the variable that's being used, that you're destructuring it into. The first one is where it's coming from, and the second one is the variable that you're destructuring it into. If we're going over to our ES5 over here, the first variable is what you call on the thing you're destructuring. And the second one, the value, is the variable you're putting it in. In Ember exports and imports, there's a shortcut for that, or it's actually longer, but it's more obvious. It's as. So we're importing here helper, but we're going to be calling it make helper. So in Ember, that syntax has changed a little bit. It's also interesting to note that even though you can do complex destructures, like we have here, it appears that within the Ember source code, there aren't any that are that complex. My guess is that this is a conscious decision in order to reduce the complexity by only having a single layer of imports. You can tell that it's already been broken down. In the old way, this would have been import from Ember, and then get the helpers, and then get this from the helpers. But in the new system that's coming soon to an Ember near you, you can import it directly from ember-html_bars/helper. So that's how it integrates with Ember. But that's not all there is to destructuring. Before we go, let's take a quick look at arrays, because arrays can destructure as well. So here we're assigning this array to the variable array, and then we're destructuring it into x, y, and z. And notice Z is now a hash still, so we can still destructure it like this. You can see logging it out. It gets us what we would expect. And a cool thing about this is you don't actually have to give the same value. You don't have to give a variable for each part of the array, so you can just leave some blank if you want. So this has been the ES6 feature, JavaScript Destructuring. If you want to learn more, you can go to this link I'll include in the show notes, and you can go to the Try It Out to experiment and see what you can do. I'll see you next time.